but she is a candidate for California State Controller. She is the chair of the California State Board of Equalization. I need to find out what that is. Let me welcome to the show, Malia Cohen. Welcome to the Karen and Drew Show. Hi.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. What is the State Board of Equalization? I've never heard of that before.
My first favorite question is the California Board of Equalization is important. It's an independent elected body that is responsible for the administration of the property tax system here in the state of California. Now, these are big numbers we're talking about. The State Board of Equalization brings in $85 billion annually to the state, to local government, to state government. And so it's really important. The state property tax system is the most stable tax system revenue stream for the state of California, to the tune of, like I said, $85 billion. And that's down. Just 2 years ago, we were at $127 billion, but it's steady and they need us.
So hello. And it
Yes.
makes California one of the richest, also one of the most expensive states to live in, which is why I guess it is
Yes.
85 billion. But a lot of people left California. They was like, we're going to Vegas and we're going to New Mexico, where we don't have to pay as much in taxes, because taxes, as a homeowner, Drew's a homeowner, where a lot of people listening are homeowners, taxes become a thing. Now, on this board, I want to just understand this, because I've never heard of this before, but how important that you preside over $85 billion and people elect you, and how many people voted for their State Board of Equalization? They probably don't even know who's on it.
So, that's interesting, because some people do. And usually people who are in trouble or can't pay their property taxes or need some help, they know how to find us and they know how to, right. to get some help. But I represent 10 million people, which is approximately the fourth of the population for the state of California. I represent 23 different counties. So when I was elected, we got a little over 2 million votes. And that's not bad for a young sister that is doing something and, making history. There was no Black woman has ever been elected to this position in the history of California. So we're talking about almost 150 years. So change is coming slowly but surely. And what we are doing is, this agency is responsible for religious institutions, Greek organizations, like churches, making sure that they know that there is a property tax exemption status that they qualify for. So the work that I'm doing is important. A lot of it has to do with outreach. A lot of it has to do with education. The people that can afford a lobbyist and a lawyer, they know how to find their way through the loopholes and know what kind of benefits are out there. Unfortunately, communities of color, African-American, Latinx, LGBTQ, women communities, we are always kind of like the last to know about what's going on and how systems can benefit us. So I've been trying to change that tide and talking to people, letting them know, hey, listen, your organization qualifies for property tax exemption. And so and like you said, that's very important. That is a huge expense to think about the Black church that has been going through a lot of changes, particularly now that we're kind of coming out of this pandemic. Just making sure that they have someone there that has their back, that can answer their tax questions for them. Taxes is a space that we don't normally feel comfortable operating in. So that's a large part of my service and why I do what I do.
Malia Cohen, and you can follow her at Malia, like Obama, Malia Cohen, and you can go to maliacohen.us. .us. I'm gonna say it like that because you're about us in our business. I appreciate that. .us. Okay, so I'm imagining you have a finance background, Malia. I think you might.
Yes and no. Yes and no. So yes, I have a degree from Fisk University, one of the nation's strongest, most preeminent HBCUs in Nashville, Tennessee. Political science with a concentration of public administration. And then I also have a degree from Carnegie Mellon University, a master's in public policy and management. And so that finance background really does come back from the business classes that I took at the Tepper School of Business.
All right. So why did you want to be not just on the board, but the chair? I guess once you get on the board, then they put you in the chair, or do you run for chair? Your
colleagues do elect you. So I ran for chair, but sometimes, I know you know this, Karen. When people need leadership, sometimes the calling finds you. I just had a couple of ideas, and next thing you know, they were like, "Oh, you should be the chair." And so when the election was in 2018, I was sworn in 2019, and also in 2019, and that first board meeting was elected by my colleagues. That was the first time. This is actually my second time around having the chairwomanship. So just, I think, being outstanding.
Okay. Now, I know Drew wants it's like double Dutch, but I've not, I don't think I've talked to a controller on this show, and I definitely have never talked to a board of equalization, never in my entire life. So I'm excited because I feel like, you know, every day we're learning something that we should probably all know. Like this should be in a civics class somewhere. Like, here are the people that impact your life, and here are the offices that are most important. But we focus on the president. And the president gets all of the blame for everything, but it's these people here that are going to reroute your tax dollars or your money or your water or your garbage, or, you know,
or call an audible and say, hey, this is not where we should be spending our tax dollars. See, that's the beautiful thing about the controller. Now, I'm running for controller now, and the controller sits on the Board of Equalization. It's a natural fit. It's a natural progression for the type of work that I do. And if you will recall, the first piece of legislation that Donald Trump ever did had to relate with restructuring the tax code for the United States. You remember that? Remember how he let his friends, his wealthy friends, pay less taxes? And so there is something to be said in the spaces of taxes. And I will be very frank, as African Americans, as women, we need to be more mindful about where our finances are going, how we are spending our money, and also our taxes. Preparing and understanding different tax shelter opportunities that are available to us, saving for a rainy day, all of these things. It's a new space, I think, for African Americans in particular. We're very comfortable advocating for police reform and criminal justice and even reproductive rights. But when it comes to taxes, finances, and fees, we got to step up. We got to step up, which is what motivates me to run for office. In order for us to change the face of power, to change the dynamics, to change how money is affecting our community, we must understand these budgets and finances. And I'm not saying you have to be a genius in math, no, but you do have to be able to add basic. There's some basic math that is required. And so I try to make this as easy as possible for people to understand why tax policy is important, why setting up maybe a 529 plan for your child in their future education is important. So there are a lot of lessons that I like to teach when I'm talking to people. And I think one of the things that I do best is I make it very simple, very plain, and let people know why you enjoy, why are property taxes so high? Why are the intercity school districts failing disproportionately compared to suburban districts? And that has to do with 1950s housing policy, long before we were even thought of. The redlining. I mean, these are pieces of legislation that do affect our fiscal and financial health as a community and as a family. And so just making sure that we are dispelling these rumors and breaking away from these vestiges that, quite honestly, have kept us down.
Malia, it's so interesting you say that, because one of the things that whenever I meet a Black economist, I'm always like, I met a superstar, right? Because I in my old job, in my current job, and so one of the things that I always ask them is, who do you need to be a collaborator and co-conspirator, right? Because I feel like it comes back to my people perish for lack of information.
Yes.
Like one little tax piece of knowledge can shift in perpetuity, right? Like, somebody tell you about, oh, there's a homestead exemption for this, or actually you don't have to pay tax on that, or you can write that off. Like that becomes like, oh, I didn't know that. Like now I have this benefit forever. How do we get more sort of like tax and economic kind of dots to connect for our communities? Where should we be going to tell these sort of economic stories in our communities?
So, I think that it's an evolution.
Yeah.
Think about our grandparents were probably the first folks in the generation to own a home or to had that home ownership vision, right? We're talking about people, at least my people, descendants of sharecroppers and descendants of slaves. So as our generations, we continue to grow and mature and become more established in the quote unquote American dream, we need to continue to educate ourselves. So now we own property. And for my conversations, I specialize in the area of property, right? So now we own property. Now we need to be vigilant of the rules that they're using to change, that they're changing the rules on how we can pass down our property to our children. Now, this is something that's been happening in the state of California. So it's just like as soon as we get a house, or our grandparents get a house and they want to transfer it down to our parents or to their grandchildren, they change the rules. And we need to be aware of how these rules are being changed and focused. That's why platforms like what we're on right now are incredibly important. Because even while I'm campaigning, people are like, when I was running for the Board of Equalization, they would say, taxes, that has nothing to do with Black people. That has nothing to do with me. I'm like, oh, no.
We pay a lot of taxes. I know I do.
Right. Right. You think about how our grandparents, and I always use it as an example, fought for their house and they paid pennies on the dollar. And now with gentrification, now they're trying to come back into the main city core and they're driving up the prices to where we cannot even afford to live here, or that we are selling our family homes and moving to other places thinking, Karen, you said Vegas as an example. That's exactly right. These homes that our people bought for like $40,000, at least in San Francisco, they're going for $1 million homes. So you do have an opportunity to make money, but we got to be wise about and think about generational wealth and wealth building. Drew, to your point, you slipped in a little scripture there. I picked it up. A people will perish where there is no vision. Yeah. And though the vision will come, you have to wait for it because it is coming for an appointed time. Now, I hope you're impressed, Drew, but
I am.
Habakkuk. Okay, that's coming from the Old Testament.
That's Old Testament right there.
But
you went to Sunday school. You got to go to Sunday school for the Old Testament.
That's old school knowledge right there, but it's very true. If we have no vision, if we don't see ourselves, we will no longer exist. We will be reliant on other people. Now, the second part of your question was how do we build this coalition? Where do we get information? And I would say venues, platforms, just like what we are on right now, reaching people, connecting with people, sharing what we know. People can follow me on Instagram. They can follow me on social media. We are always posting stuff. Now, a lot of the things that I post is relevant to the people that live in the state of California, but there are other resources that we can begin to bring and people that we can follow, like my Fab Finances. Is one of the people I love to, this Black woman I love to follow on Instagram. I mean, she's just got real salient points that affect us. And our fiscal health is very much relevant. You think about the future generations that we need to prepare for. We got a responsibility to do. We can't just sit back and let other people make decisions for us.
I love it. 866-801-8255. We're talking with Malia Cohen. So you said sharecroppers, formerly enslaved people. Where are you from? Tell us who you are. We know you went to Fisk, so that says something that you made that decision. But tell us your background.
So I was born here in San Francisco. My parents are also born in San Francisco. Now my grandparents, my father's parents, come out of Houston, Texas, Lamar, Galveston area, the Gulf Coast, and my mother's family comes from New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, after that, things get a little dicey because, as you may notice, my last name is Cohen also. And so we've got two theories working. First is the theory that my Black people were enslaved or owned by Cohens, but that is a unique point because not many Jews were allowed to own a lot of slaves. So
enslaved. The language is important to me.
You're absolutely right.
Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for correcting me. I received that. We're enslaved. And so Cohens, my grandfather and grandfather traced that Cohen lineage from Cohens that came from Prussia that settled in Coffeyville, Alabama. And my grandfather's father was white and had a business, and he was married to a Black woman. And this is in Texas. And he had a small business. He was able to go on both sides of the track, be in the white community and in the Black community and collect the garbage. So he was in the refuge and collecting the garbage. And so that's how he built up his family. That's how that's how my grandfather tells the story. So there is there is competing stories about where and how he came about with the last name Cohen. But one thing that I am not mistaken of is how the world sees me and how I am socialized and how I was raised. And that certainly was and is as a Black woman.
I wonder how often Cohen got you in the door, which is interesting. And don't have to answer interesting. That. Yeah. But also Galveston, we were just talking about Juneteenth, first hour. And many people don't know, it's like this holiday now has been handed over, but for a century or more, it was a primarily Texas holiday. Yep. It was primarily in that region that you're talking about of Galveston, which is where George Floyd's family is from, by the way, the irony of all of that. But the Great Migration sent y'all out west. And I think it's fascinating that you landed in San Francisco, which is a heavy, heavy Asian, population as well.
Well, it is now. But at the time when that Great Migration was coming, it was heavily African-American because they were working in the shipyards. Right? You think about that. That's where I live now. That's where my family, that's where we were able to buy houses during this out migration folks went up to Chicago, folks went up to Texas, came out of Texas, came up into the San Francisco area, in the Bay Area, Oakland, all in search for a job. And they found them. They found the jobs. But then when the Navy pulled out and when the shipyards began to close, so did that local economy. That Black thriving economy also shriveled up. And so people are now migrating. You see that now, like you said, to Las Vegas, to different parts of California. So we're talking repeating itself.
Unfortunately. And I want to get back to something you said earlier. You won with 2 million votes, which I'm looking at Kamala Harris when she last ran for the Senate, her primary. She got 2.1 million votes. When you said that, I said, Malia Cohen could win a lot of different offices. She got 2 million people that know her name, that pull the lever for her. And an office nobody even really knows, like the State Board of Equalization. You got 2.
I agree. That's the miraculous part.
No, there's something going on there, Malia Cohen. So state controller gives you power over what? Because this is you said the graduation and natural progression of your, and then what comes out of controller? What's next?
I don't know what comes. I'm not quite sure what comes out of controller. I'm still trying to step into that space. But when I'm thinking about the state controller has the ability to audit every single tax dollar that is spent in the state of California. And we already established that California is the 5th largest economy in the world. Yeah. The controller has a vote on the world's largest pension plan. So can you imagine how many people that affects? That's huge. And it's arguable that it's the second most powerful position to the governor. But what the controller can actually do is that she can check the spending that the governor has allocated, and she can check the spending that the state legislature has allocated. So what I'm up against is no small feat. I'll be honest with you. The state of California has only elected 4 African Americans in a statewide position. You had Wilson Riles, you had Merv Dimely, which came out in the 70s, and then you had Kamala Harris in 2015 when she ran for Attorney General. And then you have Tony Thurmond, who's a superintendent of public instruction. He was elected in 2018. So 4 statewide. So what I'm attempting to do is become the 5th person of African-American descent elected in a statewide position. And what's unique is that we're talking about constitutional offices. So that means that our duties and functions are spelled out in the California state constitution, much as the governor, the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, who, by the way, the governor appointed is a Black woman. Her name is Dr. Shirley Weber. She's on the ballot here in the state of California. She's running for re-election because she was appointed. Tony Thurmond is running for re-election, and I am, of course, running for state controller. And one last point I want to close out on, and that is, many people want to know, what the heck does the controller do? Now, I highlighted a little bit of the key functions, but the controller, quite honestly, when you think about accounting, you have accounts receivable, and that's the money that is moving into an account, moving into state government coffers. Accounts payable, that's the controller's function. She is the signature on that check. State employees, grant recipients, funding legislation, these are all going to be sanctioned and approved by the state controller. So my job is to be an independent voice for the disbursement of these tax dollars. And that's exactly what I will be doing.